Okay, so last time I did a mesh, I could show you spatial awareness and I could show the gaps. I wanted to be able to save that. That created a couple of problems. The biggest one being that the debug log wasn't accessible to me. I couldn't see it, and there was no place on the device it was logged. So I started working with how do I get some user interface up to deal with that. As a part of that experiment, I started with something that I called max headroom. Now, there's a bug on the device which I haven't bothered to go figure out at the moment, but the second demo I want to show you, for whatever reason, the two demos are colliding. So we're going to do the first demo, I'll pause, and then I'll stitch these together. So what we're seeing, or what we will see here in a moment, is a cube. It's a six-sided cube, regular material, and there are a set of spinning lights. So what I did is I reused a script called rotation. It provides some input parameters, including which object it's working on, and then it puts all these pieces together. One of the neat things about this is that I can put a container around my light objects, and I can use the script to rotate the container, and in doing so I'm rotating all the lights as well. So here's my cube. What's also interesting is I was playing with what kind of size, what percentage of our field of view is big enough and too small. So I can do a couple of things. I can tell this cube further, and it goes a little further away from me and thus looks a little smaller. Smaller, 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 larger, smaller, further. And so the cube is obeying the speech commands that I gave it. The cube is staying in space because of something in MRTK called Orbital, which allows me to position something in space. When I send it further, I'm actually sending it further away, further, and that makes it appear, the appearance is small. And so I started to play with this just to get a sense for how do I do this, what do I do to make a dialogue feel kind of real, as if it's floating and it's a modal dialogue. So closer, 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 and you see it's still a little bit out. Closer, 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 and now I can almost reach it, but I can't quite. Smaller, 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 closer, closer, closer. Okay, so now, again, it just keeps getting closer, 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 and eventually I could reach out and I could actually touch it. So this in and of itself is not terribly useful, but it gave me the basic mechanics that I could start to look at what would it be like to have a dialogue. So smaller, 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 smaller. And again, this is just kind of getting the sense for the physics of it and what does it look like and how does this work out. So I'm going to pause here. I'm going to come back with another app in a second, and I'll show you the next evolution of this to manage messages for single messages and multiple messages. Okay, so this is an evolution of it. So we start with the cube that I was using for max headroom, and then I added a sphere, and this is so I can show my swap. Object. Faster. And I'm not changing the rate of the lights moving around. What I'm actually doing is I'm changing the rate that they swap. Object. Object. Slower. 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 Object. And so you can see the swap speeds. And what I was trying to figure out was, what's the right speed at which I would have two planes come across if there were two different dialogues between the narrow, detailed view, and the broad view, the listing of the debug messages. So that's what I've been playing with.